So Michelle is our producer. We're so lucky to have her with us. She's going to be behind the scenes, kind of facilitating our discussion and helping to keep us on track. And Terry, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Terry Hammett. I live in Louisiana. I've been an educator in Louisiana for the last 30 years, French immersion, working on my Spanish, speak German as well. And now I'm a Wayside instructional strategist along with my colleagues here, Carolyn and Michelle. So we are very happy to be here. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we are so happy to be here with you tonight for the first session of our February 3-part series, Planning for Proficiency, Integrated Performance Assessments. So tonight's first installment is entitled Love is in the Air, 4 Reasons We Love IPAs. So we're going to highlight important aspects, including the benefits of using IPAs to assess your students' language and intercultural proficiency. Next, we really hope that you'll be able to join us for the remaining 2 sessions in February. Next up will be They Said Yes, Engaging with IPAs. That'll take place on February 16th. And this is where you will receive our free and new planning template. Then on Thursday, February 24th, we'll be engaging in It's a Date, where participants will interact and give feedback, collaborate, and share with one another about IPAs. We'll also have some guests who are using IPAs in their classes right now and who will share. So please note that even though our sessions are really geared towards entre culturas and entre cultures, these sessions are geared towards any proficiency-based program.
And we've put together a workbook for you to use tonight to take note of important ideas that you gain from the session that you can refer back to as needed. And you may even want to use parts of what you learned here tonight as a basis for your PLC discussions within your school settings. So here's how you can access the workbook. So you can use either the URL here or the QR code to download the workbook. And I'll ask you to do that now if you're able. And once you get to it, you're going to need to download the workbook actually in order to be able to type in it. Okay? So to download it, you'll go to this little download button here. And once you click on it, it will open the PDF. And then you'll be able to type right in it. And you can save it however you'd like and refer back to it. But again, that process of downloading is what's going to allow you to make it typable. All right, so I'll give you a few seconds to handle that.
Hey, Carolyn, while our participants are taking care of business there, I was wondering if you've ever heard of Galentine's Day. You know, it's February 13th and it's a day that celebrates friendship. How about if you and I go out and get a beer? What do you think?
Ooh, I'm in. That sounds like fun. How about if we go to Blue Springs Brewery? They have great IPAs.
IPAs? What exactly are IPAs?
Well, in the beer world, IPA stands for India Pale Ale, and all craft beer lovers have an opinion about them, and all craft breweries make one. They're hoppy, a little bit on the bitter side, and they're everywhere. You can find them at on any craft beer scene. And so with so many different options, it's really hard not to get a little overwhelmed with all the choices. In fact, the style itself is so popular, the Beer Judge Certification Program has split the category into 2 varieties of colors and descriptors. And brewers can now make black IPA, brown IPA, red IPA, white IPA, rye IPA. There's so many choices. Well, to try to make some sense of IPAs, here's an infographic that I came across that does a pretty good job of explaining them.
Wow, Carolyn, that's a lot of information to unpack.
All right, folks, so we're going to pause here and we're going to ask you all to look over this infographic. And if you would, take mental note of 3 characteristics or descriptions of IPAs that stand out to you. And I think Michelle's going to put in the chat the way that you can link on this document so it's a little bit clearer for you to see in the chat. So again, just peruse it and come up with 3 points. Just take mental notes of 3 characteristics that strike you as maybe interesting about IPAs. Okay, if you got your 3 descriptors, okay, let's move on then. So I'm curious, Terry, back to you. Which style would you like to try and why?
Well, you know, I might try the American Black. And the reason I say that is I've had dark beer before and I kind of like that. So I think that might be smooth. That's what I'd like to try to start with. So what I would like to ask the rest of you in participants here is in the chat, would you please share which style IPA you would like to try and write down why? Next, read and comment on each other's post. So please share which IPA style you'd like to try and why, and then share on someone else's post, okay?
All right, so I said that I would not try an IPA. I don't like them. They are too hoppy. And I see a couple people agree with me. You know, Jolene says, nope, it's English beer that turned. So I always think that's my new excuse of why I'm not going to have that next time. Oh, somebody's allergic to hops and can't do that. Heidi with an E is a double for me. It's been a long year. No kidding, Heidi, that's for sure. Ina says American Black IPA because it's the least hoppy. Good put. Somebody looks for something fruity. Jane will take a cider. Belgian style because they like, Jennifer likes something fruity. So we've got lots of opinions. Some black, you know, yucky. Never tried any. And so we've got some opinions on those. Awesome. Thanks for participating, everyone.
It's neat. We're all over the spectrum.
So I am kind of excited about this craft beer scene myself, even if some of you are not. What I'm going to do is tweet something about what I just learned about IPAs.
So Terry, while you're tweeting out, want to mention that now we're going to invite everybody to give some thought on what you learned about IPAs. So in the chat, please write a quick tweet yourself that summarizes what you learned about IPAs from the infographic.
All right, we've got some IPA stands for India Pale Ale. There's many, many varieties. Jolene and I have got the same opinion. Hashtag bad English beer. IPAs are not for everyone. Everyone can tweak their IPAs. Very good. Most American, high alcohol content. So many different things to consider. Awesome. So everybody learned a little bit of something, even if it was yuck. But thanks for participating, everyone, for sharing what you learned.
And while we're laughing, you know, Carolyn, when we started this, I was not planning on talking about beer, right?
Uh-oh, well, I got sidetracked, as I often do. And you're right, we're talking about what we love about integrated performance assessments. So let's talk about IPAs. So in our language education world, what is an IPA? Well, an IPA is a classroom-based performance assessment that we use to evaluate students' communication skills in all three modes of communication. So the interpersonal, the interpretive rather, the interpersonal, and then the presentational mode. So let me ask you all, how did our opening activity about IPA the beer include some aspects of an integrated performance assessment? So once again, in the chat, share your thoughts on that. Or if you prefer, just chime in and tell us your thoughts. Just speak to us and let us know what you think about how our opening activity reflected some of the attributes of IPAs.
Awesome. We've got some great answers here. So an infograph was an interpretive mode. It was authentic conversation. There was authentic communication through writing, different aspects, but they all kind of worked together. Awesome. It was authentic, personal choice, nice hook, had interpretive and interpersonal writing. Awesome.
Hey, you've hit on some great characteristics. So just to kind of recap here, we started out with a real life context where two friends planned to get together at a local brewery to enjoy some craft beers. And then they looked over that infographic, authentic resource about IPAs, and then they commented on what they learned about them, and then compared notes as to which IPA they'd like to try. And then finally, they tweeted out something interesting to them that they learned about IPAs.
So while there are many, many reasons to love IPAs, we're going to focus on these 4 attributes. So first, IPAs reflect authentic language use because they engage students in tasks just like making lists, exchanging messages, ordering from a menu, giving directions, all kinds of real life tasks. Performance assessments require that learners perform in some way that connects to the real world context. IPAs also allow learners to communicate, to show what they know and what they can do with the language in all 3 modes of communication. We use rubrics based on descriptors of the actual proficiency levels. And think about it. I mean, many of us never were taught using rubrics or descriptors or anything like that. Our assessments were fill in the blank with the correct form of the verb and the correct adjective. And so this is a different type of assessment, very communicative. IPAs go hand in hand with high leverage and high impact practices. They offer engaging tasks that provide teachers with data that goes beyond simple vocabulary or simple grammar recall. And last of all, IPAs support a learner-centered environment. They do enable learners to monitor their own progress, to understand what it means to be at a certain proficiency level, and then what they need to do to reach the next level. So just to recap, performance assessments are authentic, communicative, high impact and high leverage, and student-centered. So through the use of integrated performance assessments, the process of language acquisition becomes much more transparent, and learners are able to set their own goals and take charge of their own learning, kind of taking the mystery out of language learning. So let's just take a moment to consider how IPAs usually unfold. The first task is done in the interpretive mode. Students listen, or they view, or they read authentic text. Then the teachers provide some type of comprehension check and they give feedback. This is really important because in the next phase, learners are going to have to build on what they learned in the interpretive task. Next, students move on to the interpersonal task, communicating with one another on a topic related to the first task, the interpretive one. So two-way communication and negotiation of meaning are present as students interact, clarify, and ask questions of one another. And then usually the last phase of the IPA is where learners carry out a presentational task that builds, of course, on the second task that was done. So students present information to an audience. There is no exchange of ideas with the audience, as this is simply a presentation.
And, if you're interested in taking a deeper dive into integrated performance assessments, we highly recommend these two ACTFL publications where you can find a wealth of really practical information that takes you from theory to practice. And in this next section, we're going to look at how the IPA principles that we just talked about are found in Interculture and Interculturas in our resources. So in both series, we have both formative and summative performance-based assessments in keeping with a proficiency-oriented approach to teaching and learning. And our formative assessments are called En Camino, in our Interculturas, and J'avance in Interculture. And then our summative unit assessments are called Vive Interculturas and J'y arrive in our Spanish and French series, respectively. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, let's take a quick look at the role of formative versus summative assessments. So student performance on the formative assessment, so En Camino and J'avance, allows teachers to adjust instruction as they need to help improve student learning. Okay, it's a great indicator for us to take a look at what we're doing and tweak as needed to be sure that students are reaching those learning goals. And then students themselves can also use the formative assessment results to make decisions about their own needs for further study and how to practice in order to improve their performance. And now for student performance on the summative assessment, so Vive Interculturas and J'y arrive at the end of each unit, this indicates how well the students have achieved the learning goals and to what extent they can answer those essential questions. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you don't necessarily need to do all parts of the formative assessments. If you have time and you're able to fit them in, fantastic. But if you can't, that's okay. On the other hand, with the summative assessments, students need to complete all parts of the IPAs because as integrated performance assessment, each task, as Terry just described, will build one on the next, and that's going to give us a clearer picture of what students can do in all three modes of communication. It provides a more well-rounded picture of students' proficiency across the skill areas. And for our French teachers joining us tonight, here's just a quick look at our level 1, unit 2, Interculture formative assessment on the left, which is J'avance 2 here, and then the J'y arrive summative assessment along with the corresponding IPA rubric. And then for our Spanish teachers, here we have the Interculturas Level 2, Unit 1 IPA, and the rubric that goes with it. And now what we're going to do is kind of spotlight each part of how this unit unfolds. So you'll notice here the real life context and how students use all three modes of communication to perform tasks. So in the Interculturas Level 2 Unit 1 IPA called the Ideal School, the essential question is, how do schools in different cultural contexts meet the needs of their students? And now we're going to see the prompt. So this lays out the real life scenario about a large technology company looking to invest in education by opening bilingual schools in North and South America. And it goes on to explain that the company is asking students throughout the Americas to create and submit design ideas according to the given criteria. And then here we see the descriptions of each task, right? So here's the interpretive task. Okay, and next is the interpersonal. Okay, and that's where students will complete this based on the prompt, right? And then finally, we're going to go through and take a look at each one of these tasks in just a little bit more detail. So that first task, the interpretive one, is where students are going to watch a short video about a bilingual school in Ecuador. And then based on what they learned from the video, they note the vocabulary that they hear that they've recognized from this unit, and then they complete true or false statements about the school. Okay, so that sets the stage for the next step. So this gives them the background info that they need to carry out this next assessment, which calls for interpersonal communication. Okay, so here students are going to respond to question prompts and provide additional information about the topic. And so then this scaffolds to the next step where students participate in group conversations, basically to synthesize what they've learned, and they're sharing their ideas and learning from their classmates. So on the right, you'll see that students are answering each other's questions, and they're responding to at least 3 classmates in the discussion thread on the discussion forum. And then finally, through the presentational mode, students create a written proposal for what they believe is an ideal school that they'll go ahead and present to their peers. And personally, I love how IPAs are very comprehensive and give students the opportunity to show what they know and can do. To me, one of the biggest benefits of IPAs that I've experienced as a teacher is seeing how my students would take pride in how they could actually use French. So this is really motivating for them. And the other thing is that it encourages on their part their own self-evaluation toward learning goals. So it allows them to reflect on their own performance and helps them confirm their areas of strength. And then it pinpoints areas that they could use a little bit more work on.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Another wonderful thing about IPAs is the information that students receive from the rubrics that we talked about. Wayside Publishing has a wide variety of rubrics to choose from. There's the IPA specific rubrics that we've already alluded to. We have analytic rubrics, holistic rubrics, and for the French series, we have single point rubrics. So no matter which rubric you choose, the most important thing to remember is to familiarize your students on the criteria on which they're going to be graded.
Mm-hmm.
So as we provide more information to learners on how well they performed using the rubrics, we can give them specific recommendations for improvement by giving them targeted feedback. In this way, we're helping the learners advance in their own language proficiency. We do invite you to check out the multiple resources that are available concerning providing feedback on Wayside's YouTube channel. Simply type in feedback or type in rubrics using the search button for more particulars on this important topic. Now, we did tell you we had an IPA planner template that will be used in the next session of our series on February 16th, where Kate, Lexi, and Kelsey are going to walk you through the IPA planning process. So you can access the resources using the URL that you see here or the QR code pictured here as well. Make sure you make a copy of the document. Instructions are in the folder if you don't know how to make a copy of the document.
And we would love to see you at the next 2 sessions of our February IPA series. So here's where you can get more information and where you can register. And this information is also in your workbook, so you can access it there as well. And then we still have just a couple minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them out loud or put them in the chat. And just know too that down the road, if questions come up, you can always reach out to us at these. Here are our email addresses. So feel free to contact us at any point you have questions or want to look into this a little more deeply. So any questions you want to, or comments that you want to share?
There was one question, and that had to do, we already answered it, but just for others that are listening, and the question was whether or not the information for the IPA in Interculturas and Intercultur was online, or if it was like if students could write it out or do it on paper. And I did say that both of those options are available. There are PDFs of those if you want to print it out and have students work on their IPA that way, or they're also available online. I did also, just everyone, put a link to the whole resource folder that is going to have the planner along with this presentation in it. So you can tap into that. If you don't know how to make a copy, I put a link to that as well. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. And it says, wondering if everything is in English. Oh, one of the questions Jolene had was whether, Jolene, is that the question of whether the IPAs are in English or the planner? Those are all in English. And we have French and Spanish right now, but Wayside will have a German resource coming out, textbook coming out very shortly as well.
Okay.
And before you leave, I think you had one more thing, Carolyn, right? That we wanted to ask a favor of everyone.
We do. And so we so want to thank you for taking time out of your busy evening. We really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. And especially we know how challenging things are for you right now in the classroom. But if you have a couple of minutes, we would really love to get your feedback to let us know how we did in terms of supporting you. And if you could share your feedback with us, we can then take that into account for the next series that we'll be planning. So here's where you can access the short survey. And again, you have that in your workbook as well. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you are just a few helpful resources to help you create and implement IPAs and then evaluate student performance. And this slide is also included in your teacher workbook, but there's some great things to dig into here to help you along your way. And then finally, Terry and Michelle and I are just so appreciative to have you with us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And you all take good care.
Yes. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it and hope it was helpful for you.